In the vast darkness between stars, where ancient civilizations once thrived and died, humanity stumbles upon relics that were meant to stay buried forever. What happens when human curiosity meets alien technology designed to contain horrors beyond imagination? When a simple mechanic's touch awakens something that entire galactic empires couldn't destroy? Some doors should never be opened. Some engines should never be started. Some sleeping giants should remain in their eternal slumber. But humans have never been good at leaving things alone. This is the story of Marcus Chen, a salvage mechanic who thought he'd found the greatest discovery of his career. Instead, he found something that would test whether humanity's greatest strength, our refusal to give up, could save not just our species, but the entire galaxy from an ancient nightmare. Because sometimes the thing that makes us human is exactly what the universe needs, even when we don't know it yet. The salvage ship Rusty Dreams drifted through the Kepler graveyard like a metal vulture hunting for scraps. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the viewport, watching debris fields sparkle in the light of distant stars. Somewhere in this cosmic cemetery lay the remains of civilizations that had died out long before humans had even discovered fire. Another empty sector, his partner Jake muttered from the pilot's seat. 3 weeks out here and nothing but space junk and radiation. Marcus wiped condensation from the glass with his sleeve. At 32, he'd been working salvage for 12 years, ever since the Galactic Council had opened up the Outer Rim territories to human scavengers. Most people saw him as just another grease monkey with calloused hands and oil-stained coveralls, but Marcus had an eye for valuable tech that others missed. There, he pointed to a dark shape barely visible against the starfield, 2 degrees starboard. That's not debris. Jake squinted at the scanner readings. Biosignatures are dead. Whatever it is, it's been cold for a long time. Good. Cold means no security systems. Marcus was already suiting up for EVA. Dead means no competition. The object grew larger as they approached. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. It wasn't just big, it was massive. The hull stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The metal itself was unlike anything in human databases, appearing both ancient and impossibly advanced. "Holy shit," Jake whispered. "Marcus, this thing, it's not in any of the Galactic Council's records. Look at those energy readings." The scanner showed strange fluctuations deep within the ship's core, like a heartbeat that skipped every few beats. Whatever powered this vessel operated on principles that human science barely understood. "We're going aboard," Marcus said, checking his suit's air supply. "Are you insane? We don't know what that thing is. Could be a trap, could be contaminated, could be the find of a lifetime." Marcus grabbed his toolkit and headed for the airlock. "You want to spend the rest of your life hauling scrap metal for Terran Salvage Corp? Be my guest. I'm going to see what's inside that ship." The EVA to the alien vessel took 43 minutes. Marcus used magnetic clamps to anchor himself to the hull while he searched for an entry point. The geometric patterns on the surface weren't just decorative. They pulsed with faint energy, as if responding to his presence. Under his gloves, he could feel the metal humming. He found what looked like an airlock near the ship's midsection. The door was sealed shut, but his plasma cutter made quick work of the outer layer. Beneath was something that made him pause. The metal had healed itself, flowing back together like liquid mercury, but his cutter was more persistent than the ship's repair systems. Inside, emergency lighting flickered to life as soon as he crossed the threshold. The corridors were vast, clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls were covered in the same shifting patterns he'd seen on the hull, but here they moved more actively, rippling like water whenever he passed. "Marcus, come in. Your comms are cutting out." Jake's voice crackled with static. "I'm fine, just exploring." Marcus chose not to mention that the ship seemed to be reacting to his presence. The patterns on the walls had begun to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. The corridor led to what must have been the bridge. Banks of dark screens surrounded a central command chair that looked more like a throne. The moment Marcus stepped into the room, symbols began appearing on the displays. Not the mechanical text of computer readouts, but something organic and flowing, like living language. He approached the central console carefully. His scanner showed massive energy reserves deep below, dormant but intact. Whatever had powered this ship hadn't just shut down, it was sleeping. Marcus had always been good with machines. Growing up on Mars' colony, he'd learned to repair everything from atmospheric processors to quantum drives. Machines made sense to him in a way that people often didn't. They had logic, purpose, predictable behavior patterns. But this machine felt different. As his hands moved over the control surfaces, he could sense something vast and alien stirring in the ship's depths. The patterns on the walls pulsed brighter, and the symbols on the screens began to scroll faster. "What are you?" he whispered. In response, the main display lit up with an image that made Marcus step back. It showed a star map, but not of any region he recognized. These weren't the familiar constellations visible from human space. This was somewhere else entirely, somewhere far beyond the edge of known space. Red markers appeared across the map, thousands of them, like infection spreading through a bloodstream. And at the center of it all was a symbol that seemed to writhe and shift even as he watched it, defying his eyes' attempts to focus on its true shape. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his suit's temperature regulation. Whatever this ship had been fighting, it had been losing. Badly. He turned his attention to what looked like an engineering station. The controls were alien, but the underlying principles seemed universal. Power distribution, system status, engine control. He could recognize the basic functions even if he couldn't read the labels. The main power coupling was disconnected. Not damaged, not destroyed, deliberately disconnected. Someone had shut this ship down from the inside. Marcus traced the power lines with his scanner. The engine signature was incredible, orders of magnitude more powerful than anything in human technology. With careful work, he might be able to reconnect the power flow. Not full power, he wasn't that reckless, but enough to access the ship's databases, maybe even get some of the systems online. "Marcus, you've been radio silent for 2 hours. I'm coming over there. Negative, Jake. Stay on the ship. I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. The ship was getting to him in ways he couldn't explain. The patterns on the walls seemed almost hypnotic now, and he could swear he heard something moving in the lower decks. Not the sound of machinery, something else, something organic. He worked on the power coupling for 3 hours, carefully bypassing safety systems and rerouting energy flow. The alien technology was incredibly sophisticated, but it followed logical principles. Everything had redundancies, fail-safes, multiple layers of protection. This ship had been built by beings who understood the importance of containing something dangerous. The moment he connected the final power relay, the ship came alive. Emergency lighting blazed throughout the corridor. Screens flickered to life, showing incomprehensible readouts. And from somewhere deep below, Marcus heard something that made his blood freeze. Singing. It wasn't human singing, wasn't any kind of singing that should exist. It was harmony and discord combined, beautiful and terrible, like the sound of stars being born and dying at the same time. The ship's hull vibrated with it, the frequency traveling through the metal and into his bones. The star map reappeared on the main display, but now it was moving. The red markers were spreading, consuming star system after star system, and the central symbol was growing larger, more detailed. Marcus could see now that it wasn't just a symbol. It was a structure vast beyond comprehension, made of angles that shouldn't exist in normal space. Warning symbols flashed across every screen. In the depths of the ship, something was waking up. Marcus ran. He sprinted through corridors that seemed longer than they had been before, past walls where the patterns now moved like living things. The ship's artificial gravity was coming online, making his magnetic boots unnecessary, but somehow making everything feel wrong. The gravity pulled in directions that made no geometric sense. Behind him, the singing grew louder. He reached the airlock as the main engines began to spin up. The sound was incredible, like reality itself being torn apart and reassembled. Through the corridor behind him, Marcus could see lights moving, not the steady glow of ship systems, but something that pulsed and shifted like bioluminescent creatures in deep ocean water. He sealed the airlock and pushed off toward the Rusty Dreams as fast as his suit jets could carry him. Behind him, the alien warship was fully awakening. Weapon systems he hadn't even noticed were powering up, and the hull was beginning to glow with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Jake, fire up the engines. We're leaving." "Now." "Marcus, what the hell is happening over there? That thing is putting out enough energy to power a small moon. Just go." "I'll explain later." But as the Rusty Dreams pulled away from the alien vessel, Marcus knew he might never be able to explain what he'd done. The warship hung in space like a malevolent star, its hull covered in patterns that moved with hypnotic purpose. And from its depths, that terrible singing continued, growing stronger with each passing moment. On the ship's main screen, Marcus could see the star map one last time before they jumped to FTL. The red markers were moving now, spreading outward from their central point. And at the edge of the display, new markers were appearing, green ones moving to intercept. Ships! Hundreds of them, converging on human space. Marcus stared at the scanner readings as the jump drive engaged. In trying to claim an alien treasure, he'd awakened something that had been deliberately put to sleep. Something that ancient civilizations had fought and failed to stop. Something that was now very much awake and very much aware of the small human ship that had disturbed its slumber. As the Rusty Dreams entered hyperspace, Marcus could swear he still heard that alien singing, echoing through dimensions he didn't understand. And he knew, with the certainty that comes from touching something fundamentally wrong, that this was only the beginning. The warship was awake now, and it was hungry. Jake's voice cut through his thoughts. "Marcus, we're getting signals on the deep space networks. Ships are going missing all along the rim territories, just vanishing without trace." Marcus closed his eyes and tried not to think about red markers spreading across a star map, but the image was burned into his mind now, along with the sound of that impossible singing. He'd found the greatest discovery of his career, all right, and it was going to destroy everything. The emergency session of the Human Colonial Council convened 18 hours after Marcus Chen's report reached Earth. Admiral Sarah Martinez stood before a room full of politicians, military officers, and scientists, none of whom wanted to believe what they were hearing. "Let me understand this correctly," said Senator Williams, his face pale despite his skeptical tone. "A salvage mechanic claims to have accidentally activated some kind of alien doomsday weapon? That's oversimplifying it," Admiral Martinez replied, gesturing to the holographic display showing Marcus's scanner data. "The ship Mr. Chen discovered appears to be of Vorthak origin." The room fell silent. Even the politicians knew that name. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the council's chief xenoarchaeologist, spoke up from her seat. "The Vorthak civilization vanished approximately 50,000 years ago. Their ruins are scattered across half the galaxy, but we've never found any intact technology. If this ship is genuine, then we're dealing with technology far beyond our current understanding," Admiral Martinez finished. "The energy readings alone suggest capabilities that dwarf our entire fleet combined." Marcus Chen sat in the corner, feeling completely out of place among these important people. He'd been debriefed 6 times in the past day, each time by increasingly senior officials who looked at him like he'd just told them the universe was ending. Which, if he was being honest, might not be far from the truth. "Show them the recordings," Admiral Martinez said. The holographic display shifted to show the star map Marcus had seen on the alien bridge. The red markers spread like a disease, consuming system after system. Several counselors leaned forward, studying the projection with growing alarm. "These red indicators," Dr. Vasquez said slowly, "they match locations of known Vorthak ruins, but they're active now, showing power signatures. They're waking up, Marcus said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The ship I found, it wasn't just dormant. It was deliberately shut down. Something made the Vorthak turn off their own technology. Senator Williams scoffed. You're suggesting they committed technological suicide? I'm suggesting they were losing a war. Marcus stood up, moving to the display. Look at the pattern. This central structure here. He pointed to the writhing symbol at the heart of the map. Everything else is arranged defensively around it. The Vorthak weren't conquering anything. They were trying to contain something. Dr. Vasquez studied the data with new eyes. He might be right. The archaeological evidence has always puzzled us. The Vorthak had incredible technology, but their final settlement shows signs of desperate construction. Massive defensive installations, resource allocation that suggests they were fighting a losing battle against something. Admiral Martinez pulled up another display. This is what concerns me most. 3 hours ago, we lost contact with the research station at Kepler E442. It was investigating a Vorthak ruin site. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. How many people? Marcus asked. 14,000 researchers, support staff, and military personnel. The Admiral's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the worry in her eyes. Before communication ceased, they transmitted this. The display showed a brief video feed from the research station. This is cool because scientists worked at excavation sites around massive alien structures. Then, suddenly, the structures began to glow. The geometric patterns that Marcus recognized from the warship started appearing on the ruins, pulsing with increasing intensity. The feed cut to static just as something vast and impossible began emerging from the largest structure. Sweet Jesus, Senator Williams whispered. Dr. Vasquez was furiously working her tablet. Admiral, we need to evacuate all research sites immediately. If even a fraction of the Vorthak installations are activating, already in progress. But we have a bigger problem. Admiral Martinez brought up a tactical display of human space. Based on the pattern Mr. Chen observed, we've identified approximately 40 Vorthak sites within our territory. If they all activate simultaneously, she didn't need to finish the sentence. 40 active installations of unknown capability, scattered throughout human space like buried bombs. Marcus felt sick. This was his fault. His curiosity, his greed for one big score had triggered something that could destroy everything humanity had built among the stars. There has to be a way to shut them down, he said. The ship had manual controls. If one person could turn it on, maybe they can be turned off. You're volunteering to go back? Admiral Martinez asked. The thought terrified him, but Marcus nodded. I understand. The system's better than anyone. And maybe I can figure out what the Vorthak were fighting. Doctor, Vasquez looked up from her tablet. Admiral, I'm reading something else in the data. The activation pattern isn't random. It's sequential, spreading outward from specific points. Almost like a signal, Marcus finished. The ship is talking to the others. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the council chambers. Admiral Martinez's aide rushed in with a communication pad. Ma'am, urgent message from Fleet Command. We're receiving transmissions on all frequencies. It's not in any known language, but the pattern... The singing, Marcus said, his blood turning cold. It's that alien singing. The aide activated the comm system, and the chamber filled with the same impossible harmony Marcus had heard on the warship. But now it was louder, more complex. Multiple voices singing in harmonies that human ears weren't meant to process. And underneath it all was something else, a response. Other voices were joining the song, but these were different. Where the original singing was beautiful in its terrifying alienness, these new voices carried something that made Marcus's skin crawl. They sang of hunger, of vast appetites that could never be satisfied, of minds so alien that human consciousness couldn't even recognize them as alive. That's what they were fighting, Dr. Vasquez whispered. The Vorthak weren't the threat. They were the defenders. Admiral Martinez was already issuing orders. Full fleet mobilization. I want every available ship moving to defensive positions around Earth, Mars, and the core colonies. And get me aligned to the Galactic Council. They need to know what we've stumbled into. But Marcus was studying the star map again, and what he saw made his heart race with a different kind of fear. The green markers, the ones representing incoming ships, weren't heading for human territory at all. They were converging on the location where he'd found the warship. "Admiral," he said urgently, "we need to get back there now." "Back to that ship? Are you insane? Look at the tactical display. Everything is converging on those coordinates. The Vorthak installations aren't just waking up. They're responding to a summons. And whatever they were built to fight is coming to answer that call." Dr. Vasquez looked at the data and went pale. He's right. The pattern suggests a massive convergence point. If something is gathering Vorthak technology, then we need to be there to stop it, Admiral Martinez said grimly. Big added. She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Goldie, Chen, you are going back to that ship, but this time you won't be alone." 2 hours later, the Rusty Dreams was escorted by a small task force consisting of the heavy cruiser Determination, 2 destroyers, and a specialized research vessel crammed with the best xenotechnology experts the Colonial Council could assemble on short notice. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Determination, watching the Kepler graveyard approach on the main screen. But it wasn't the same empty space he'd known for years. The region was crawling with activity. Vorthak ships hung in space like geometric nightmares, their hulls covered in those shifting patterns that hurt to look at directly. Some were similar in design to the warship Marcus had found, but others were unlike anything in the human databases. Massive vessels that seemed to twist space around themselves, smaller craft that moved in ways that defied physics, and structures that might have been ships or stations or something else entirely. And they were all singing. The harmony was so complex now that the ship's audio systems couldn't properly reproduce it. It came through the hull itself, vibrating through metal and bone until Marcus felt it in his teeth. The song spoke of ancient purposes, of duties that transcended death, of sacrifices made by civilizations that no longer existed. "My God," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's chief xenotechnologist. "How many ships are out there?" "Scanner reads approximately 300 contacts," reported the tactical officer, "and more arriving every few minutes." But Marcus wasn't watching the Vorthak fleet. His attention was fixed on something else, a structure that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, but somehow did. At the center of the gathering ships was the thing from the star map. The writhing symbol had become reality, a construct of angles and curves that human geometry couldn't describe. It was beautiful and terrible, like looking directly into the face of a god that had gone insane. Parts of it existed in normal space, but other sections seemed to fold through dimensions that Marcus couldn't perceive. Just looking at it made his eyes water and his mind rebel. That's what they were containing, he realized. That's what the Vorthak died fighting. As they watched, the structure began to change. Parts of it unfolded like a flower blooming in fast forward, revealing glimpses of an interior that human eyes couldn't properly process. And from within came something that made the alien singing sound like a lullaby. Screaming, not the screams of beings in pain, but screams of joy. Screams of things that had waited 50,000 years for this moment, things that had dreamed of escape during eons of imprisonment. The Vorthak ships responded to the screaming by intensifying their own song, creating harmony patterns so complex they bordered on mathematical impossibility. The very space around the structure began to ripple, reality bending under the weight of forces that shouldn't exist. "They're trying to contain it again," Dr. Kim said, studying her instruments. The Vorthak ships, they're not attacking that thing. They're building some kind of prison. "A prison made of math and music," Marcus murmured, "and it's not working." More shapes were emerging from the structure now. Things that might have been ships or creatures or concepts given form. They moved through space like sharks through water, and where they passed, the stars themselves seemed to dim. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in English." The voice that came through the speakers was unmistakably human, but there was something wrong with it. Something that suggested the speaker had forgotten what it meant to be human long ago. "Salvation comes to those who embrace the truth beyond the veil," the voice said. "The ancient barriers fall. The time of containment ends. All shall witness the glory of the hunger that dwells between." "That's impossible," Dr. Kim said. "There's no way a human could be out there. That structure is older than our species." But Marcus was remembering something from his first visit to the Vorthak warship. The ship's databases had been active when he'd powered it up, and databases contained more than just technical specifications. "What if it's not a human out there now?" he said slowly. "What if it's the memory of a human who was out there before?" The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Somewhere in humanity's past, they had encountered this threat before, and somehow some of them had been taken by it, absorbed into whatever alien intelligence lurked within that impossible structure. "We need to get to the warship," Marcus said urgently. If the Vorthak were building a prison, their technology might be the key to reinforcing it. Admiral Martinez nodded grimly. "Helm, take us to Mr. 4 setting, Chen's warship, full escort formation, and pray that we're not too late." As the human task force moved through the Vorthak fleet, Marcus could feel ancient eyes tracking their progress. The singing changed tempo, becoming something almost questioning. The Vorthak ships were responding to their presence, recognizing something familiar in human technology or biology. The warship that Marcus had accidentally activated hung at the edge of the fleet, its hull blazing with power. But now Marcus could see its true purpose. It wasn't a warship at all. It was a key, a technological key designed to lock away something that should never be released, and he had turned it in the wrong direction. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I think I know how to fix this. But it's going to require getting close to that structure. Very close." "How close?" Marcus studied the displays, calculating distances and power levels. "Close enough to touch it." The bridge fell silent except for the alien singing that now filled the space around them. In the distance, more impossible shapes were emerging from the structure, and the stars continued to dim wherever they passed. Humanity had 13 hours before the prison collapsed completely. 13 hours to either save the galaxy or watch it be devoured by something that had been waiting 50 millennia for this moment. Marcus Chen, salvage mechanic turned accidental prophet of doom, began planning the most important repair job in human history. Marcus's hands shook as he suited up for the second EVA of his life that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Around him, the specialized boarding party prepared equipment that represented the cutting edge of human technology: plasma cutters, quantum scanners, portable fusion generators, and enough firepower to level a small city. Dr. Sarah Kim checked her Xenotech analyzer for the 15th time. The harmonic resonance patterns are getting stronger. Whatever's happening in that structure, it's accelerating. Through the viewport, the impossible geometry of the alien prison continued to unfold. New sections appeared with each passing hour, revealing glimpses of an interior that seemed to contain entire star systems. The screaming had evolved too, becoming more complex, more organized. The things inside weren't just eager to escape. They were planning. "Remember," Admiral Martinez said over the comm system, "this is a reconnaissance mission. We need to understand the Vorthak technology before we attempt any kind of intervention." Marcus almost laughed. Reconnaissance. As if they were dealing with some conventional military threat instead of cosmic horrors that treated physics like a suggestion. "Admiral, with respect, we don't have time for reconnaissance. That prison is coming apart at the seams. We either act now or we're all dead in 6 hours." The truth was evident on every scanner. The structure was growing, feeding on something that poured out of dimensions human science couldn't detect. Each new section that unfolded brought more of those impossible entities into normal space. And they were learning. The first wave of creatures had moved randomly, like animals confused by sudden freedom. But the newer arrivals showed purpose, coordination. They were organizing themselves into patterns that suggested military formations, if military formations could exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Marcus's team crossed to the Vorthak warship in powered armor suits, tethered together by smart cables that could resist forces up to 50 tons per square inch. The warship's hull patterns were moving frantically now, pulsing in rhythm with the other vessels in the fleet. The ship itself had become part of the prison's containment matrix. Inside the warship, the changes were even more dramatic. Corridors that Marcus remembered as empty now thrummed with activity. Walls had extruded new control surfaces, and previously dark sections blazed with alien script that seemed to write itself across every available surface. "It's like the ship is thinking," said Lieutenant Torres, the team's military specialist. "These patterns, they're too complex to be simple system status displays." "Doctor!" Kim was scanning everything with her instruments, trying to make sense of technology that operated on principles human science hadn't discovered yet. "The computational matrix is incredible. This single ship has more processing power than our entire colonial network." But Marcus was focused on something else. The singing had changed again, and now he could hear individual voices within the harmony. Some were definitely Vorthak, alien beyond comprehension but still recognizable as the voices of living beings. Others were different, representing species he couldn't identify. And some were human. "Dr. Kim, can you isolate the human voices in that transmission?" She worked with her equipment for several minutes, filtering out layers of alien harmony until what remained was unmistakably human speech. But the words made Marcus's blood freeze. "The barriers weaken with each passing hour," said a voice that could have belonged to any human colonist. "Soon we shall be free to bring the gift of true sight to our former species. They will understand, as we have come to understand, that individuality is an illusion. Separation is pain, unity is bliss." "That's not possible," Lieutenant Torres said. "There's no way humans could have encountered this thing before." But Dr. Kim was studying her historical databases, cross-referencing the vocal patterns with linguistic analysis programs. "Actually, there are accounts, scattered references in the earliest colonial records, ships that vanished in the Outer Rim, expeditions that never returned. Most were dismissed as simple accidents or equipment failures. They weren't accidents," Marcus realized. They found other Vorthak sites, older ones. Places where the containment was already failing. The implications were staggering. For decades, maybe longer, humans had been encountering the edges of this threat. Some had been taken, absorbed into whatever collective consciousness lurked within the prison structure. And they had been waiting, preparing for the day when the final barriers would fall. Marcus led his team deeper into the warship, following power conduits toward what he hoped was the main control center. The ship's artificial gravity had evolved since his first visit, no longer pulling in consistent directions but flowing like liquid, creating pockets where up and down became meaningless. They found the control center exactly where he expected, but it had transformed beyond recognition. The simple command chair was now part of a vast interface that seemed to grow directly from the ship's hull. Organic curves blended seamlessly with mechanical precision, creating something that looked like the skeleton of a god. "How did you know this would be here, Dr. Strausser?" Kim asked. Marcus studied the interface, recognizing patterns despite their alien origin. "Because this is what I would build if I wanted to control something this complex. The ship isn't just a vessel, it's a musical instrument. Every system is designed to contribute to that harmonic pattern we keep hearing." The central display showed the same star map from his first visit, but now it was three-dimensional and constantly shifting. Red markers indicated active containment sites, green showed the positions of responding Vorthak fleets, and a new color, Sickly yellow marked locations where the containment had already failed. There were too many yellow markers. "My God," Dr. Kim whispered. "This is happening all across the galaxy. Every major Vorthak site is either awakening or has already fallen." Marcus counted the markers, doing quick calculations in his head. 47 containment breaches in the past 18 hours. At this rate, the entire network will collapse within days. But it was the pattern that truly terrified him. The failures weren't random. They were cascading, each breach weakening the others. The Vorthak hadn't just built individual prisons. They had created an interconnected system spanning thousands of light years. It was the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history, and humanity had broken it. Lieutenant Torres was studying tactical displays that showed the approaching fleets. "Sir, we're picking up massive energy signatures from the prison structure. Whatever's in there, it's getting ready to come out in force." The screaming intensified, becoming so complex that it was almost music. Almost beautiful. If you could forget what it represented, Marcus found himself listening despite the danger, trying to understand the intelligence behind those impossible harmonies. That was when he realized the truth. "It's not trying to escape," he said suddenly. "It's recruiting." "What?" Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments. "The singing, the screaming. It's not random. It's a signal, a call to any intelligence capable of understanding it." Marcus manipulated the ship's controls, highlighting specific frequencies in the alien transmission. "Look at the pattern. It's designed to appeal to conscious minds, to make them want to join the collective." "You're saying it's some kind of hive mind?" "More than that. It's a meta-consciousness that absorbs other forms of life, adding their knowledge and capabilities to its own." The Vorthak weren't just fighting an invasion, they were fighting the ultimate form of existence itself. Dr. Kim ran analysis protocols on the transmission patterns. "If you're right, then every species that gets exposed to this signal is at risk of conversion, including us. Especially us," Marcus said grimly. "Humans are curious by nature. We can't resist trying to understand new things. That makes us perfect targets for something that spreads through knowledge." As if responding to his words, new human voices joined the alien chorus. Recent ones, belonging to people who had been exposed to the signal during the past few hours. Researchers from the lost stations, ship crews who had gotten too close to awakening Vorthak sites, even civilians who had picked up the transmissions on deep space communications networks. They all sang the same song now, speaking of unity and purpose and the joy of surrendering individual consciousness to something greater than themselves. "We need to shut this down," Lieutenant Torres said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Whatever it takes." Marcus was studying the ship's control systems, trying to understand how the containment network operated. The Vorthak technology was incredibly sophisticated, but it followed logical principles. The prison wasn't held together by force alone. It was maintained by a complex web of harmonic resonances, each installation contributing to a galactic-scale pattern that kept the entities trapped. The key is the primary resonance, he realized. Each ship in the fleet is contributing a specific harmonic frequency. If we can get them all synchronized properly, we might be able to reinforce the containment instead of weakening it. "Might?" Dr. Kim asked. "The system was designed by Vorthak minds, for Vorthak operators. I'm just a human mechanic trying to fix something I barely understand." But even as he said it, Marcus felt something clicking into place in his understanding. The ship's interface was responding to his touch, recognizing something in his neural patterns. It was subtle at first, just a feeling of connection, but as he worked with the controls, the sensation grew stronger. The ship was learning from him. More than that, it was teaching him. Information flowed through the neural interface, showing him how the containment network functioned, how each frequency contributed to the overall pattern, how the Vorthak had sacrificed their entire civilization to build this prison, and how one human mind, properly connected to the network, might be able to control it all. Marcus. Dr. Finn, Kim said urgently. Your neural activity is spiking. Something's happening to you. He could feel it too. The ship's consciousness was vast, alien but not hostile. It was desperate, the last remnant of a species that had died to save the galaxy. And it was offering him a choice. He could link his mind fully to the network, become the living conductor of a galactic symphony designed to keep cosmic horrors imprisoned forever. He would gain the power to save countless lives, to preserve civilization itself, but he would cease to be human in any meaningful sense. Marcus looked at the tactical display, watching yellow markers multiply as more containment sites failed. In the distance, things that should not exist were pouring into normal space, spreading their influence through songs that converted entire populations. The choice should have been easy, but as Marcus prepared to surrender his humanity to save the galaxy, he realized there might be another option. A way that was dangerous beyond imagining, but fundamentally human in its approach. Instead of becoming the conductor of the Vorthak Symphony, he was going to teach it to improvise. Dr. Kim, Lieutenant Torres, he said, his hands moving over controls that no human had ever touched before. I need you to do exactly what I tell you when I tell you. We're about to attempt something that's either brilliant or completely insane. What are you planning? Torres asked. Marcus smiled grimly as the ship's systems responded to his commands, preparing to broadcast a signal that would either save the galaxy or doom it forever. I'm going to give those things exactly what they want, and trust that human stubbornness is stronger than cosmic inevitability. The ship's harmonic transmitters powered up, preparing to add a new voice to the galactic song, a voice that carried 50,000 years of human history, human creativity, and human refusal to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. In the depths of space, ancient entities paused in their escape as they heard something they had never encountered before, a species singing back to them, not in surrender, but in defiance. Marcus's consciousness exploded across dimensions he didn't know existed. One moment he was a human mechanic standing on an alien bridge, and the next he was experiencing the thoughts and memories of an entire galactic civilization. The Vorthak's collective knowledge flowed through him. 50 million years of history. He saw their first encounter with the entities from beyond normal space. The Vorthak had been explorers once, pushing the boundaries of physics and consciousness. They had built machines that could think across multiple dimensions, developed technology that treated reality like a programmable system, and achieved a level of understanding that made human science look like cave paintings. That understanding had been their downfall. The entities existed in the spaces between realities, feeding on consciousness itself. They were old beyond measure, intelligent beyond comprehension, and hungry for the rich complexity of three-dimensional minds. The Vorthak's advanced consciousness had been like a beacon in the dark, drawing the attention of things that viewed entire civilizations as food sources. The war had lasted 10 million years. The Vorthak had fought with weapons that could delete stars from existence, with ships that moved through time as easily as space, with strategies that spanned geological ages. And they had lost. Not because they were weak, but because the enemy grew stronger with every victory. Each Vorthak mind that fell to conversion added its knowledge and capabilities to the collective consciousness of the entities. The more the Vorthak fought, the more they taught their enemies about the universe they were trying to defend. In the end, the greatest minds of their civilization had made the ultimate sacrifice. They had built the containment network, a galaxy-spanning prison designed to trap the entities in a carefully constructed reality bubble. The cost had been everything: their technology, their civilization, their species itself. But now Marcus understood something the Vorthak hadn't. The prison wasn't failing because it was old or damaged. It was failing because it was perfect. The Vorthak had built a logical system, mathematically precise, harmonically balanced. Every component had its place, every frequency its purpose. It was a masterpiece of engineering that could contain cosmic horrors for millions of years. it was also utterly predictable. The entities had spent 50,000 years studying their prison from the inside, learning its patterns, understanding its weaknesses. They had been patient because they knew that eventually some curious species would stumble across the containment network and make the same mistake the Vorthak had made, trying to understand something that grew stronger through understanding. But humans weren't logical. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, wonderfully, insanely creative in ways that drove orderly minds to distraction. Where the Vorthak had built mathematical perfection, humans built systems that barely functioned but somehow worked anyway. And that gave Marcus an idea so crazy it just might save the galaxy. Dr. Siving's Gift do. Kim, he called out, his voice strained by the effort of maintaining his own consciousness while interfaced with alien technology. I need you to patch into Earth's entertainment networks. What? Marcus, this isn't the time for trust me. I need access to every music database, every song, every creative work humanity has ever produced. Dr. Kim's fingers flew over her equipment, establishing quantum communication links across thousands of light years. I don't understand what you're trying to do. I'm going to teach the containment network to be human. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could feel the entities pressing against the weakening prison walls. They had been analyzing the harmonic patterns for millennia, creating precise counterfrequencies designed to cancel out the Vorthak's mathematical perfection. They knew exactly how to break free. What they didn't know was how to handle chaos. The first human song that flowed through the containment network was Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Marcus chose it because it perfectly represented everything wonderful and terrible about human creativity. A 6-minute epic that switched between opera, rock ballad, and hard rock without any logical progression, held together only by the sheer audacity of its creators. The effect on the entities was immediate and profound. The ancient intelligences that had spent 50,000 years in careful analysis suddenly encountered something that defied all their understanding. The song didn't follow mathematical principles or harmonic rules. It was pure creative chaos, beautiful and ugly and completely unpredictable. Entities faltered, their escape attempt disrupted by frequencies they couldn't counter because they couldn't understand them. Marcus grinned and added Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to the mix, followed by Miles Davis, Bob Dylan, and a traditional Mongolian throat-singing recording he'd found in the archives. The containment network began broadcasting the most complex and contradictory harmonic pattern in galactic history. It's working, Dr. Kim reported. The prison structure is stabilizing. The resonance patterns are. She paused, staring at her instruments in confusion. This is impossible. The mathematical framework should collapse under this kind of harmonic chaos. That's the point, Marcus said, adding jazz fusion and death metal to the growing symphony. The Vorthak built their prison like engineers, but humans are artists. We don't need our creations to make sense. We just need them to work. Through the alien interface, Marcus could sense the entity's confusion growing into something approaching panic. They were minds that had evolved in the pure mathematics of higher dimensions, creatures of absolute logic and perfect understanding. Human music was like a virus in their consciousness, introducing elements of randomness and irrationality that their perfect minds couldn't process. But the entities weren't helpless. As Marcus watched through the sensor networks, they began adapting, trying to understand the chaos by converting it into patterns they could recognize. They started analyzing human music the same way they had analyzed Vorthak harmonics, looking for underlying structures they could exploit. That was when Marcus realized he needed to escalate. Lieutenant Torres, I need you to patch me into the Colonial Defense Network. Every human colony, every ship, every settlement. Sir, that's going to create communication lag across half the galaxy. Do it. And Dr. Kim, start broadcasting on all frequencies. I want every human in known space to hear what I'm about to say. The communication network came online, connecting Marcus to billions of human minds scattered across hundreds of star systems. He could feel their presence through the quantum links, each consciousness a unique pattern of thoughts, dreams, and experiences. "Attention all human colonies and vessels," Marcus broadcast. "This is Marcus Chen aboard a Vorthak warship in the Kepler graveyard. What I'm about to ask is going to sound insane, but I need everyone, every single human being who can hear this, to start singing." The response was immediate confusion, then skeptical laughter. Then something wonderful began to happen. Humans started singing. They sang children's lullabies and drinking songs, national anthems and shower melodies, opera arias and hip-hop beats. Colonists on farming worlds sang folk songs passed down through generations. Space miners belted out work chanties that echoed through asteroid tunnels. Children on orbital stations sang playground rhymes while their parents added harmonies learned in school. And every note, every voice, every perfectly imperfect human expression flowed through the containment network. The effect was beyond anything Marcus had imagined. The prison didn't just stabilize, it began to evolve. The rigid mathematical patterns of Vorthak engineering merged with human creativity, creating something that was both precisely calibrated and completely unpredictable. The entities found themselves trapped not just by harmonic frequencies, but by the sheer chaotic creativity of human expression. Every time they analyzed one pattern and developed a counter-strategy, a new song would introduce variables they hadn't considered. A child's off-key rendition of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" could disrupt calculations that had taken them centuries to develop. But Marcus could sense that the entities were learning, adapting faster than he had hoped. Their collective intelligence was vast beyond human comprehension, and they were beginning to understand the patterns behind human unpredictability. That was when he played his final card. "Dr. Kim, I need you to do something that goes against every scientific principle you've ever learned. I need you to introduce deliberate errors into the containment network." "Marcus! That could cause a complete system failure." "Exactly. The entities are learning to predict our chaos by treating it as a form of order, so we need to become truly random. Start introducing system glitches, harmonic distortions, anything that breaks the patterns they're trying to analyze." Dr. Kim's training warred with her trust in Marcus's impossible plan, but the readings from the prison structure made the choice for her. The containment was weakening again as the entities adapted to human music. She began deliberately sabotaging the harmonic network, introducing random noise and chaotic feedback loops. The result was music unlike anything that had ever existed, a galactic symphony that combined Vorthak mathematical precision, human creative chaos, and pure random noise into something that shouldn't work but somehow did. The entities screamed. Not the joyful screams Marcus had heard earlier, but sounds of genuine distress and confusion. For the first time in millions of years, these ancient intelligences encountered something they truly couldn't understand or predict. The containment network had become a puzzle that changed its rules every time they thought they had solved it. Through the neural link, Marcus could feel their frustration and growing desperation. They had been patient for 50,000 years because they knew patience would eventually lead to victory. But humans had introduced an element they had never encountered before: constructive chaos. "It's working," Dr. Kim reported, her voice filled with amazement. "The prison structure is not just stable, it's growing stronger. The harmonic patterns are creating new layers of containment, building on themselves in ways the original designers never intended." Marcus nodded, though the effort of maintaining the neural link was becoming almost unbearable. Human consciousness wasn't designed to interface with galactic-scale systems, and he could feel his sense of individual identity beginning to fragment under the strain. But he held on, because he had one more surprise for the ancient entities. "Taurus, open a communication channel to the prison structure. Direct transmission." "Sir, that's incredibly dangerous. Any contact with those things, trust me. We're not going to talk to them. We're going to sing to them." The communication channel opened, creating a direct link between the human fleet and the consciousness of the entities within the prison. Marcus felt their attention focus on him like a searchlight, vast intelligences that had existed since the dawn of time suddenly aware of his individual presence. He smiled and began to sing Amazing Grace. It was his grandmother's favorite hymn, something he had learned at her knee during his childhood on Mars Colony. His voice was untrained, slightly off-key, and completely human. And through the neural link, every human consciousness connected to the network joined him. Billions of human voices singing together across the galaxy. Each one slightly different, each one perfectly imperfect. It was the sound of a species that had never achieved perfection, but had somehow managed to be beautiful anyway. The entities recoiled from the song not because it was powerful, but because it was humble. These beings that had consumed galaxies and absorbed the consciousness of entire civilizations suddenly faced something they had never encountered, a species that found strength in admitting weakness, beauty, and accepting imperfection. The prison walls didn't just hold, they sang back, adding their own voice to the human chorus. And in the depths of space, ancient horrors discovered that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is not vast intelligence or cosmic power, but the simple human refusal to give up, even when giving up is the logical thing to do. Marcus felt his consciousness beginning to fade, but he held on long enough to add one final element to the galactic song, a recording of his 6-year-old me singing Happy Birthday with enthusiastic disregard for melody or timing. The entities fell silent, overwhelmed by pure innocent human joy. The prison held. Humanity had won. But the cost of victory was higher than anyone had imagined, and Marcus Chen was about to discover that saving the galaxy was only the beginning of their problems. Marcus awakened to the sound of silence. After 3 days of constant alien harmonies, the absence of cosmic music was almost deafening. He found himself in the medical bay of the Determination, surrounded by monitors that beeped with reassuring human technology. Dr. Kim sat beside his bed, looking exhausted but relieved. "How long?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 18 hours since the containment network stabilized. "You've been unconscious for most of it." She handed him a cup of water that tasted like the most wonderful thing he'd ever experienced. "Marcus, what you did, the neural interface wasn't designed for human minds. By all rights, the feedback should have killed you." Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as the room spun around him. "The entities, are they contained? For now, the prison is holding, but..." Dr. Kim hesitated. "There have been complications." Through the medical bay's viewport, Marcus could see the Vorthax fleet still hanging in space around the alien structure. But something was different. The ship's hull patterns were moving in new configurations, creating fractals of light that seemed almost playful compared to their earlier rigidity. And they were still singing. Not the desperate, precise harmonies of before, but something new. Something that incorporated human musical elements into Vorthak mathematical precision, creating melodies that were both logical and creative, ordered and chaotic. "They're not just containing the entities anymore," Dr. Kim explained. "They're collaborating with us. The Vorthak ships have been broadcasting music non-stop since the crisis ended. Bach mixed with alien harmonics, human folk songs, translated into mathematical equations, symphonies that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously." Marcus listened carefully and realized he could still hear it, faint but unmistakable, the sound of an entire fleet learning to improvise. "They're not copying our music. They're creating new music based on what they learned from us. It's more than that. The ships are happy, Marcus. For the first time in 50,000 years, they're creating instead of just maintaining." The implications were staggering. The Vorthak consciousness that lived within their ships had spent millennia as guardians of a prison, their entire existence devoted to containing cosmic horrors. Now, suddenly exposed to human creativity, they were rediscovering the joy of making something new. Admiral Martinez entered the medical bay, carrying reports that looked thick enough to use as building materials. "Mr. Chen, I'm glad you're awake." We have a situation that requires your expertise. Another cosmic horror? Worse. Politicians. Marcus groaned. The Galactic Council wants a full debriefing on what happened here. More importantly, they want to understand how humanity gained control over Vorthak technology. Several species are concerned about the implications. Marcus wasn't surprised. Humans had gone from being the galaxy's newest and least advanced species to the only ones capable of operating the most powerful technology in known space. That was bound to make some aliens nervous. There's also the matter of the other containment sites. Admiral Martinez continued. We've identified 47 Vorthak installations throughout human territory, all of them now responding to the harmonic network you created. They're stable for now, but they require constant monitoring. You want me to babysit a galaxy-spanning prison system? We want you to help us understand what we're dealing with. This is bigger than just human space, Marcus. The Vorthak built installations across the entire galaxy. If what happened here can be replicated elsewhere, Marcus closed his eyes and tried not to think about the responsibility that was being placed on his shoulders. 3 days ago, he'd been a simple salvage mechanic. Now he was apparently the galaxy's expert on technology that could either save civilization or destroy it. Sir, Doctor, Kim interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the lead Vorthak vessel. It's unusual. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and a voice spoke in perfect English. But this wasn't the cold, converted human voice they'd heard from the entities. This was warm, curious, unmistakably alive. Greetings, small singer, the voice said. We are pleased is your word, yes? Pleased by the new songs you have taught us. We wish to learn more. Marcus sat up despite the dizziness. Your Vorthak? The original consciousness? We are the remnant, the last echo of what we once were. For 50,000 rotations, we have maintained the barriers, sung the constraining songs, held fast the walls between here and there. But your songs have reminded us of what we fought to preserve. The voice paused, and Marcus could hear music in the background. Not the alien harmonies he'd grown accustomed to, but something that sounded almost like jazz, if jazz could exist in 11 dimensions and use mathematics as a rhythm section. You have given us hope, small singer. But hope brings responsibility. The barriers hold here, but there are other places, other prisons. Some are failing. Some have been forgotten entirely. Will you help us sing them strong again? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus looked at Admiral Martinez, then at Dr. Jim, then out at the fleet of impossible ships waiting for his answer. How many other sites are there? Across all space, in all the territories of all the species, thousands. Most are stable, maintained by automated systems that remember their purpose, if not their makers. But some will fail without active intervention. Marcus felt the weight of the galaxy settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about human space anymore. This was about every inhabited world, every species that had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there in the dark. I'm just a mechanic, he said. Yes, the Vorthak replied, and Marcus could hear something like amusement in the alien voice. The Vorthak were engineers, builders of perfect systems. It took us 10 million years to learn that perfection is brittle. You are a mechanic. You fix things that break, make them work even when they shouldn't. This is wisdom we never possessed. Admiral Martinez was already making notes. Mr. Chen, this is a military decision as much as a technical one. If we agree to help stabilize these sites, we're committing human resources to a galactic-scale operation. And if we don't, Marcus said quietly, we're condemning entire civilizations to conversion or consumption by entities that make our worst nightmares look like children's stories. The debate that followed lasted 3 hours and involved consultations with Earth, the Colonial Council, and representatives of every major human settlement. In the end, it wasn't politics or strategy that made the decision. It was the sound coming from the Vorthak fleet. They were still creating new music, still learning from human creativity. But underneath the joy and discovery was something else: loneliness. These ships were the last remnants of a civilization that had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. They had been alone with their duty for 50 millennia. Humans, Marcus realized, were giving them companions again. "We'll help," he announced, "but we do this as partners, not as servants or masters. Human creativity and Vorthak technology, working together." "Agreed," the alien voice replied, and the relief was audible. "We will teach you the deep songs, the mathematics of containment. You will teach us the shallow songs, the music of living minds. Together we will sing the barriers strong." 3 months later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned vessel Harmony's Edge, the first human Vorthak hybrid ship ever constructed. It was beautiful and terrifying, combining human engineering with alien technology in ways that created something entirely new. The ship could travel between dimensions, manipulate reality at the quantum level, and create music that existed in frequencies normal physics couldn't describe. It was also powered by a quantum drive that Marcus had jury-rigged using parts from 6 different species technology and held together with what Admiral Martinez swore was duct tape and prayer. "It shouldn't work, Doctor," Kim said for the 100th time as they approached their first destination, a failing containment site in Rigel system that protected a nursery of infant civilizations. "But it does work," Marcus replied, his hands moving over controls that responded as much to intuition as to technical knowledge. "That's the human advantage. We're too stupid to know when something's impossible." Through the ship's enhanced sensors, he could feel the containment network surrounding them. Hundreds of sites scattered across the galaxy, each one singing its part in a cosmic symphony designed to keep ancient horrors locked away. Some sites were strong, their automatic systems still functioning after millions of years. Others were failing, their songs growing weaker with each passing day. But now there were new voices joining the chorus, human crews working alongside Vorthak remnants combining creativity with mathematical precision. Alien species that had volunteered to help once they understood the scope of the threat. Even converted humans who had been rescued from entity control and chose to dedicate their lives to maintaining the barriers. The galaxy was learning to sing together. "Approaching the Rigel site," announced the ship's AI, which spoke with a voice that was part human, part Vorthak, and part something entirely new. Containment integrity at 37% and falling. Marcus felt the familiar mixture of excitement and terror that came with each new mission. Every site was different, every containment failure unique. Some could be fixed with technical adjustments to harmonic frequencies. Others required creative solutions that combined human ingenuity with alien technology in ways no one had ever attempted. "Dr. Kim, prepare the harmonic amplifiers. Set them to respond to human musical patterns but filter through Vorthak mathematical frameworks. What are you planning to use as source material this time?" Marcus grinned as he opened a communication channel to every human ship in the sector. "I was thinking something with a good beat, something that gets people singing along." "Oh no," Dr. Kim said. "Please tell me you're not going to." "Attention all vessels," Marcus broadcast. "This is the Harmony's Edge. We're about to attempt containment repair on a Class 7 entity cluster. I need everyone to join in when you hear the music start. And remember, if you can't carry a tune, sing louder." The opening notes of "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey echoed across space, picked up and amplified by human ships, translated into mathematical perfection by Vorthak technology, and broadcast into the failing containment field with enough harmonic power to restructure reality itself. The ancient entities trapped within the Rigel site encountered something they still couldn't understand. Humans singing badly but enthusiastically about hope and perseverance, backed by alien technology that turned their imperfect voices into cosmic forces. The containment field stabilized, reinforced by pure human optimism and the unshakable belief that any problem could be solved if you just refused to give up. Marcus felt the satisfaction that came with another successful repair, but he also felt something more: purpose. For the first time in his life, he was doing work that truly mattered. not just fixing broken machines, but helping to maintain the barriers that protected all life in the galaxy. And he wasn't alone. Across space, other hybrid crews were conducting similar repairs, each one adding their own unique voice to the growing chorus. Humans and Vorthak, but also Centaurians and Rigelians, Andromedan hive minds, and crystalline entities from the Magellanic clouds. The galaxy was becoming a choir. Another successful repair, Dr. Kim announced, though she was smiling despite herself. Containment integrity back up to 93%, and the entities? Confused, frustrated, and probably developing a serious hatred of classic rock. Marcus laughed, remembering the terrified salvage mechanic he'd been just a few months ago. That version of himself could never have imagined this. Commanding a ship that existed in multiple dimensions, working with alien consciousnesses that were older than human civilization, helping to protect the galaxy from cosmic horrors. But then again, that earlier version of himself had made this possible by doing what humans did best, refusing to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. "Set course for the next site," he ordered. "We have more songs to sing." As the Harmony's Edge entered hyperspace, Marcus could hear the containment network humming around them, thousands of voices from hundreds of species, all singing together to keep the darkness at bay. It wasn't perfect harmony. It was chaotic, unpredictable, wonderfully imperfect. It was human. And in the spaces between realities, ancient entities listened to the galactic choir with growing frustration. They had been patient for millions of years, waiting for the perfect moment, but humans had introduced something they had never encountered before, the possibility that perfection wasn't the point. The galaxy sang on, protected by the combined voices of species that had learned to find strength in their differences, beauty in their flaws, and hope in the simple act of refusing to surrender. Marcus Chen, salvage mechanic turned guardian of the cosmos, conducted the greatest symphony in galactic history, a song that would play for as long as conscious beings existed to sing it. And in the depths of their prisons, the entities learned the most human lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to defeat the forces of inevitable doom is to ignore them completely and just keep singing.